Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander, and I am, as always, honored and excited to get to host another Power to Fly Chat and Learn virtual event. Now, today we're going to be talking about the power. This way, my weatherman skills clearly still need work, y'all. But we're going to be talking about the power of being an introvert at work. Now, it should be no surprise to any of you, but I am not an introvert. So I will be presenting I'll be kind of helping out for the con or the anti-introvert side today. But I'm very, very excited to see all of you joining us. Now, I do want to go over some quick housekeeping items. This will be especially important if today is your first Power to Fly event. And if that's the case, then hi, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Now, the love is no less real for my frequent flyers. I adore seeing your familiar names and faces and avatars in the chat. So thank you all so much for coming out today. Now, I'm going to encourage participation like we always do on these events, but I'm going to temper it a little bit for y'all introverts out there. So if you want to, you are encouraged to participate in a number of ways. The first one that I encourage you to do is turn your cameras on if you'd like. Now, I understand we have a lot of introverts in the audience. If that is you and you do not want to turn your camera on, but you are here and excited to be here, go ahead and throw me a +1 in the chat, okay? I'm not going to make you come on camera, I promise. It's no big deal. But if you do want to come on camera, that's fine. No need to be Instagram perfect, y'all. Just because I got fancy and washed my hair today does not mean you can't show up with your 3-day messy buns, bathrobes. Makes no difference to us, y'all. You could be coming to us from a corner office or your living room couch. We just want to meet you where you are. Now, as we go through, I do want to remind y'all that we are recording today's event. Now, what that means for you is you don't have to take notes. You get to relax, sit back, enjoy the conversation that I'm about to have with Anisha. And you don't have to worry if you missed a resource that someone lists or anything like that. So what's going to happen is everybody who registered for today's event, whether you were able to join us or not, everybody is going to get an email from Power to Fly in about 4 to 5 business days, and it's going to have a link to where you can rewatch this recording once it goes live on our website. Now, that can take a couple of days because we got to, get rid of the gremlins in the machine, all that kind of thing. But let's say that, Anisha says something so mind-blowing that you can't wait 4 to 5 days, that you want to tell a friend or a coworker or a relative right now, you can. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. We're live streaming there as I speak. Hi, YouTube. And you can head over there. You can check out the live stream. The video is usually posted by the end of business today. And then there's a whole archive on that YouTube channel that has like kind of a bunch of like our greatest hits, some of our favorite events and favorite chats. So I really recommend that you check it out there. Now, obviously, we're in the age of now, right? People want things and they want them quick. But I do very much recommend that you check out powertofly.com as well. So, there's a selection of some of our past archives on that YouTube channel, but the mother load, the Ark of the Covenant levels, acres and acres and acres of resources are stored on powertofly.com. Now, they're all free. You all get free access to them and full access just by benefit of coming to today's event. But we want to put these resources in the hands of as many people as possible. In case you are unaware, Power to Fly's objective is to, create true pay equity and gender parity in the workplace. So we think one of the ways we're going to move that needle is by getting all of these resources into the hands of everybody. And if you're here today, that metric is probably important to you too. So I do encourage y'all, if you want to spread the news about Power to Fly, let people know your social networks that you are learning and growing with Power to Fly today. You can tag us. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I don't think we're on TikTok yet. And you can always use our hashtags, hashtag Power to Fly or hashtag Fly with Us. Now, the last thing I want to encourage y'all to do is to be active in the chat if you would like. So you're free to let us know questions in there. If you have any questions for the speaker today, please feel free. I also really encourage y'all to network and connect with your fellow attendees. Pardon me, y'all. So I really encourage y'all to head over there, and I would love to know where y'all are joining us from today. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that belonged to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. And if you'd let us know where you're dialing in from, and if you know whose land you're on, you're welcome to do so. Let's see, we've got Barrie, Ontario represented. We've got Pennsylvania. We've got Madison, Wisconsin. Atlanta, Georgia, Worcester, I learned this one. Worcester, Massachusetts, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've got family up that way. Scottsdale, Arizona, New Jersey, Kitchener, Ontario, Arvada, Colorado. Thank you all. Mississauga, Seattle, Priscilla in Germany. I'm loving this. Thank you, y'all. Thanks so much for chiming in. I love seeing how far we can pull people in. All right, now, last thing I'm going to highlight for y'all is the code of conduct. This is a ton of legal jargon. It's a lot. Basically, what it boils down to is don't be a jerk, okay? Just lead from a place of kindness and respect. It's pretty hard to go wrong from there. If you got questions, you can always DM me. I am happy to share, answers or help you out in any way you'd like. I do also want to encourage. No, we'll wait to do that until after we introduce y'all to today's speaker. So, like I said, code of conduct over. Let's keep it moving. Now, I'm very excited to introduce you to today's speaker. Now, Anisha Jhaveri is joining us today. Anisha is a writer and an editor with 10 years of experience crafting editorial as well as product copy. Now, her writing has appeared on leading platforms in entertainment, arts and culture, and health, including IndieWire, RogerEbert.com, NBC Asian America, and Greatest. Now, Anisha is a recipient of the Sundance Ebert Fellowship for Film Criticism and spent over 5 years at Netflix as a lead creative writing strategist for content slates across regions. Now, born and raised in Japan to Indian parents, Anisha is now based in the New York area, and she brings a global mindset to her passion for storytelling and creative collaboration. She also believes that effective strategy and impact stem as much from curiosity and empathy as they do from statistics and data. Anisha thrives when she can leverage her multicultural background and editorial expertise towards projects and partnerships. So I hope you'll help me welcome to the stage today, Anisha Jhaveri. Anisha, I'm so happy to get to meet you today and bring you up on stage. Is there anything else you would like our audience members to know about you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here, first of all. Anything that I would like the audience to know? Well, I'm based in Jersey City, New Jersey. And you asked me to share a fun fact.
Oh yeah, what were we going to share? If you could, and I'm encouraging the audience members as well. Please feel free to weigh in on this if you would like. Anisha, my question for you was if you could have any mythical creature as a pet. It doesn't have to come out of myth, but just something that's not real, alive, functioning on this planet. If you could have any creature like that for a pet, what would it be?
Okay, so it's funny you asked me this because don't ask me how, but it came up last week. And when you say mythological creature, my mind always goes to Japanese mythological creatures because that's where I was born and raised. So the first thing that came to mind was it's called Kirin, and it's basically like this creature that's supposed to look like a deer, and it has dragon-like scales on its body, and it has like an ox-like tail, and there's a lot going on. It has a mane. But it's supposed to be very gentle, and it only appears during times of world peace, so it's very rare. But I think my favorite part about it is that they never harm anyone or anything that has a good heart. But if they're ever threatened, they have these fire-breathing abilities that enable them to get pretty tough when they're attacked. So I kind of like that soft but fierce when necessary approach to life. I aspire to that myself, so I'm going to go with that.
Yes, I love that. I think that's amazing. It very much aligns with one of my personal mottos, which is do no harm, but take no SHIT from people. I can't swear, sorry, y'all. We're on a professional channel. However, that is one of my favorite things to kind of live my life by. So I very much love this. Kieran is a great choice. Francois says his would be Phoenix, being reborn from the ashes. That's an excellent one.
Good one.
I used to think I wanted either a dragon or a wyvern, but as we were talking earlier, I'm gonna go with that giant tardigrade from Star Trek Discovery season 1, because that thing could teleport, and there's just something cool about like this is my tardigrade. He's enormous. You've never seen anything like him. Okay, bye. Like I just love. All right, y'all. Please feel free to let us know what your mythical animal would be. I would love to hear. Ooh, and Ria just found a picture of one and put it in the chat. Thanks, Ria. A picture of the Kieran that Anisha mentioned. All right, now before we keep moving on, I do want to highlight that you have a blog. So we've got a QR code there if people want to check it out. What should they know about this?
So it's kind of like blog slash portfolios. So you can see samples of my Netflix work. You can see all of the film reviews that I used to write back in my days as a film critic. You can find ways to contact me. So yeah, hopefully you'll find everything you need over there. And I'm very happy to hear from anyone. So please do reach out.
All right, excellent. Okay, we're going to be diving on into some questions today. Now, just in case anybody is new here, we ask questions that you all ask at registration. So What that means is we will most likely have a chance to ask your question here, but if we don't, I really encourage y'all to stay active in that chat. You all came here to spend time with Power to Fly and Anisha, so I want to make sure that's worth your while. So if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to throw them into the group chat. If you have a question or a comment that you would like raised, but you want to be kept anonymous, no worries, just DM me. You can find my name, Meg Alexander, in the drop down. Oh, and I just realized I forgot to give a visual description in case we've got people with hearing or vision issues. So I'm a 38-year-old white woman. I have blue and pink hair, black glasses, and I'm wearing a watermelon print shirt. Anisha, do you want to give a visual descriptor as well?
So I am a South Asian woman with brown hair, and I'm wearing what, I don't know what color you'd even call this. What
Brown?
would brownish red
Yeah,
top? Yeah.
I like it. Okay, cool. Thank you. Burgundy. Francois got a
Burgundy.
spot,
Is
man.
it coming across as burgundy? That's interesting.
You know what? I have to change my screen so that I don't get the glare in my glasses. So like my color is like all messed up. I've got it like very desaturated over here. So, all right. Okay, let's get going. We're going to go into the questions that you all asked at registration. Now, if you have a question and you're not sure if we're going to get to it, ask it in the chat. Ask early, ask often. That is the best way to make sure that we get your question answered today. Okay, let's start off with a discussion of some of the strengths of introverts. What do you think unique strengths introverts bring to the workplace? And what do you think are some ways that we could leverage those qualities?
Sure. So I wonder if it's worth it to like just do a definition of introversion.
Yeah, absolutely. I love
Um,
that.
Even though I just said that, and it's actually not a one size fits all kind of answer, and I'm sure we'll get into the misconceptions that people have about introverts during this call. But I was doing some research earlier, and even I was surprised to learn that there's like four general types of introversion. So you have one who's a social introvert who just has a preference for socializing in smaller groups or being on their own. And then you have the thinking introvert, who doesn't necessarily have hesitation around social interactions, but they're very introspective. You know, they live in their heads, thanks to just having very creative, imaginative natures. And then you have the anxious introverts who are like social introverts, who they prefer smaller gatherings, but that's driven more by like a sense of awkwardness or social consciousness. And then you have the restrained introverts who the people who need time and space before they speak, and they don't do well when they're expected to talk or act without having that space. And you'll find that introverts often identify with several of these traits. I certainly identify with elements of all of these. So introversion is a spectrum, but I think if there's some commonalities that I would point to among them, I boil it down to two things. Is that first is that introverts recharge in solitude. They tend to get overstimulated in loud social environments. So we gain energy from being alone, and that time is very precious for us. And then two, I heard this once, I forget where, but I think it sums it up really well, is that extroverts talk in order to think and introverts think in order to talk. So I think that is just a good way to sum it up. And I think it's also important to mention that part of what determines whether you're more introverted or extroverted is actually genetic. So we're wired that way. So hopefully that like helps lay some ground for this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even if you don't necessarily think of yourself as an introvert, I mean, I think we all have that sensation of kind of that feeling of like your battery wearing out, whether it's a social battery or a task battery or whatever. But I think we all kind of have that same familiarity with like feeling like we're a balloon with some of that air a bit let out. And you're just like, you know what? I think I'm done with this situation. So yeah, I very much appreciate this. And you're right, like a lot of us might experience this, but introverts especially will experience this to a bit of a higher degree than other people, or might, get worn out by things that you would not necessarily think would wear someone out socially or whatever. Like this is, yeah, I agree with you. It's all kind of, it's a spectrum and it's going to depend a lot on individual people.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. One of these things that is very difficult is this idea that, especially in America, especially if you're a woman, you're not supposed to brag about yourself. You're not supposed to talk about the things that you've done well. And so that can make it very difficult in a lot of ways for introverts to showcase some of their talents because by definition, a showcase feels miserable. So how do you recommend people kind of show off and highlight these abilities and achievements without feeling like they're bragging?
Yeah. Yeah. I relate to this question. so much because so I come from a culture and an upbringing where more often than not, I was again born and raised in Japan in an Indian family. And the messaging and conditioning a lot of the time was that showcasing your abilities does come across as bragging. And so you pair that with a naturally introverted personality where I tend to be a little bit more reserved. And so touting my accomplishments feels even more like I'm showing off, even though I do want the abilities and achievements to be recognized. I just don't want to be the one doing it. Um, but the truth is, in a corporate culture where, you know, it favors extroverted behaviors, it is really necessary to be visible, or it can become very easy to get overlooked. So I'm still working on it, but I think there's a few things to keep in mind. I'm just going to share like a quick anecdote is that a friend was helping me prepare for a job interview recently. And midway through one of my answers, she stopped me and she's like, "Why are you talking so fast? Are you nervous?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I also feel like I have a lot to say, but I don't want to take up too much of the interviewer's time by going on about how I accomplished this task." And she was like, "You realize that's the point, right? Like, of course, there's a difference between rambling and giving a succinct explanation, but don't gloss over your impact because you're worried about using the time allotted to you to do that." So that's all to say, I think we tend to be exceptionally hard on ourselves when it comes to highlighting the things that we've accomplished. So the fact that we're even hyper aware that we might be bragging is probably a telling sign that we're not. So what seems like bragging to us could be just stating a fact for someone who's less introverted than we are. You know, I think in work settings, especially in reviews, performance reviews, interviews, we're always encouraged to use I statements to be specific about the impact we personally had and the role we personally played in the success of something. But I don't know, I feel like that's really unnatural because so much of the time it's not true that you did it all by yourself. What I like to do in those situations is not focus solely on the end result, but emphasize the challenges and how I got somewhere. And I think that's just like, it helps me feel more humble about it. And if it's really important to share what I did, then I try to focus on the actual work and not the personality traits, if that makes sense. So for example, some people may be very comfortable saying, "I'm a great communicator," or "I'm very organized," or "I'm a great writer and I've won awards for it." And for me, I just sound awkward saying that. So I focus more on like turning that around into what I like doing. So I love being able to communicate through writing, or I enjoy staying organized. And these may feel more like passive statements, but I think it works as a starting point as you get more comfortable talking about your wins in the workplace.
I very much like that. I think that's a really good way to do it. I I struggle with this even as a non-introvert. And so for me, a lot something that's helped has been thinking about it and acting as though I'm bragging about a friend, because like I will hype my friends up for days because I have some amazing people in my circle. They are funny, they are kind, they do amazing things in their day-to-day lives. And so I have no problem hyping them up, but I'll be mean as hell to myself. So yeah, like pretending like I'm talking about a friend makes it a lot easier for me to put myself in the right mindset, and not feel like these are things worth talking about. And then, obviously I'm showing my age as an elder millennial in this, but in the immortal words of Trick Daddy, it ain't tricking if you got it, right? So if you've actually done the thing, it's not bragging because it's just fact. Like this is a thing that you've done. Now, if you are constantly one-upping people or something like that, then maybe we got different problems to talk about. But I think you're right. I mean, if this is something you've done, it is fact. You're not like hyping yourself up or making yourself seem more than you are just by stating that was a thing that I did. Like,
Totally.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love that idea of kind of coming back to the way that you feel best operating in the world. I think that's good. I really like that. Okay. Um, One of the things that we know from introverts, or that is a very common trait within introverted people, is that kind of deep focus, right? And being able to like kind of step back and reflect on what's going on around us. How do you think introverts can use this tendency for that deep focus and reflection to excel in whatever role they currently have?
Yeah. I guess I would seek out more tasks and opportunities where those qualities can be harnessed to their maximum. I think deep focus and reflection are just two of the many traits that may make introverts great leaders. So I'd actually encourage introverts to not shy away from leadership roles or leadership opportunities. I think being able to take time and reflect lends itself to really good decision making because you're considering the pros and cons and you're not making these like impulsive knee-jerk type of decisions. I think also in leadership positions, you know, the ability to reflect on and empathize with how your direct reports are reacting to things are other great qualities for a manager to have. But even if you're not in a leadership role, I mean, I think those qualities can set you up really well no matter what role you have, but particularly in like user or customer facing jobs, I think being able to focus and dive deep can make you great at things like research and writing. And so maybe seek out those tasks more. Being able to focus and being detail oriented can be really good for strategic planning, project management, editing, that kind of thing. But I don't think that there's any role in particular that isn't or is suited for introverts. I think it's more about how we manage our own energy and our own strengths on whatever job we have. So being an introvert in and of itself shouldn't be like a limiting belief as to what you pursue.
I absolutely agree with this. And I think that that's one of those things that I find both beneficial as well as a bit of a hurdle sometimes to work around is by like, stepping more into my mental health and doing a better job of taking care of myself and getting diagnosed and all these things. Like I have bipolar disorder. I live with bipolar type 2. And you're right, like kind of it puts you in a certain mindset and it can be very limiting in thinking of the things that are easiest for you to do or easier for you to do versus the things that are really, really difficult. And I think you make a very good point there, which is it's not a limiting thing. It's just okay, how do I do this differently so that I can get the job done, but also I'm taking care of myself. Yes, I'm giving my 100% that I can give at work, but I'm not borrowing from tomorrow to bring that 100% every day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's also just about like knowing what and what doesn't appeal to you. I think someone in the chat may have said like maybe not the party planner, or maybe you're not going to be a tour guide, or even if you are though, I would encourage you like even if that does somewhat appeal to you, that kind of very people-facing role, again, it's about managing then how you restore that energy at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend about this because she was talking about how she was going to be hosting her 20-year reunion for high school, right? So that's how old I am, y'all. But like she was talking about this and how like it used to be so easy to do this and blah blah blah. And now I'm just all stressed and like I don't know, I'm gonna be exhausted. And I'm like, okay, well then let's plan for that. And she goes, what do you mean? I go, well, first off, rest is something you deserve all of the time because you're a person. We don't earn rest. Rest is a thing that if you need it, you need it. Don't talk like you can't beat yourself up about it because you need it. You don't
Put
yell
that
at your
on a
car when it doesn't
t-shirt.
have gas in it, right? I mean, I do, but like, you don't expect it to do anything. So there's that. But then like plan on the other side for like how you're going to recharge your battery, right? Like I love my job. I love coming here and talking to you all the time. But like when we have a virtual job fair day and I'm on camera for like 3 to 5 hours straight, it's a lot. And I don't talk to my husband for at least 6 hours when I get off of that call. He knows it. He knows to expect that I'm just going to be a little bit like, hug, bye. Like I'll sit there, but I don't want to be addressed. I don't want to be asked questions. I don't want to decide what's for dinner. I'm not doing anything. I need to relax. I need to recharge that battery. And again, this is something I do for my job. So like I have to know how to recharge that. And it's all about knowing yourself, which sucks, but you're not going to get that except with the experience of time. So it's that trial and error thing, right? How
Yeah.
did you figure out what worked for you to like recharge your battery?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I came from like doing the least. So it was more for me about actually pushing myself to get out there and experiment more. And then kind of find an equilibrium being like, okay, that was too much. So I'm going to dial it back and maybe not be as out there because I simply don't like to do that. But I think the more I pushed myself, the more I realized that like I'm actually not as like I don't need to be in my own shell as much as I initially thought. So it's been I'm still working on it, but I think it's been a really good growth journey to be like I didn't need to be on that extreme, but I don't need to be on the other either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you don't need to be punishing yourself for what it's going to take out of you to host something, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. Okay. Um, when it comes to corporate culture, as a whole, as an idea. We had somebody up in the chat, Mary A had chimed in on this. So Mary, I'm going to pull your answer out here in just a little bit as well. But for Anisha, I want to talk to you about this first. How can introverts effectively communicate their ideas and contributions in a workplace that often favors extroverted behaviors? So, you've got a company where your boss is like, all right, ideas, hands up, who's got idea? And obviously that's not really built for you. So
Yeah.
how do you recommend introverts go about this, trying to raise ideas and stuff, knowing that you're in an environment that is going to reward the stuff that other people are doing that you are just, that's not me.
Um, so when it comes to like verbal communication, I like to write it out in advance. It's been key for me, especially as a writer. I think being an introvert, sometimes communicating verbally or even confrontation is really scary because having to think in the moment without having the time to contemplate what you're going to say, it's very daunting. And I find that I express myself best in writing. So whether it's having a difficult conversation with a manager or pushing back on something a colleague is requesting, doing it in writing or writing it out in advance, and then saying it to them has been a lifesaver for me. And then also, thankfully, we live in a world now where virtual communication is more of a thing. So, I mean, I remember team meetings where they would say, okay, everyone has 5 minutes to brainstorm how to rewrite this piece of copy from different angles, like go. And I would dread that because 5 minutes was not nearly enough time for me to even wrap my mind around the task at hand. And then you have the pressure of having to talk about it and present it to the team. And
And
I,
defend it, right? It's not just like, here's the thing I came out with.
yeah,
Okay, here's the thing that my brain spat out. Now I have to defend it.
exactly. And it just made it impossible to then be creative. So for a long time, I wouldn't end up contributing anything and I'd had nothing to show at the end of 5 minutes. So what I actually started doing was taking the time after the meeting to think further about the prompt. And then I would use, like, our team use Slack or whatever, messaging tool that you use in your companies. I would use that to share my ideas with the team later. And I would just say, hey, I'm following up from the meeting earlier. I took some time to think. Here are some of my ideas. And that was a way for me to just tell them, hey, I'm still here. I'm listening. I'm doing the work and I have ideas. And so I made sure I was able to participate despite the activity itself being way more suited for extroverts. Um,
I like that though. I think that's
yeah,
a really good idea because like here's the thing, right? Obviously, he's trying to like popcorn. He's trying to like probably show that like it's okay to like throw out something that doesn't work right away because that's what they're trying to do. But not everybody's process is like that, I'm so critical of myself that I'll go through like 8 revisions in my head before I even commit to thinking the whole thing out in a sentence in my head. So,
exactly.
it is, I think you're right. It's fabulous to do that because it is also showing there are people thinking about this in a different manner, which is going to give you more of that variety that that it seems like your boss is going for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that. And plus it is highlighting that like you were present in the meeting, you were like engaging in the discussion and you were like, on subject and stuff. But
Right.
here's what I was able to come up with. And I don't, granted, solutions after the fact are not really helpful, but like there's generally nothing wrong with saying like, hey, I know they suggested these 8 things, but this thing popped into my head. How about that? Like,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it was most of the time it was received really well. I think it just made them realize even more that, like, yes, as you said earlier, people tend to think differently. And when you put someone on the spot, particularly an introvert who, we do best when we have the space and the time to fully formulate our ideas and then bring them to a table. So I think it just made them a little bit more aware of that. And I think they even ended up like giving us more time after that to do some things. So it worked.
And you might not have been the only person that really would prefer that or
Yeah.
that works better that way.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, we were a room full of writers at the end of the day, and we tended to be a little bit more introverted. So,
no, absolutely. Okay, so as we're talking about this, when it comes to strategies, what kind of strategies do you think introverts can employ when it comes to things like, team meetings, group discussions, to not feel quite so overwhelmed?
well, I first like to just say I'm nervous. I think sometimes naming the fear can be part of winning the battle against it. And I've started many meetings that I've had to lead or even just be part of by simply just telling the others that speaking in front of people is not my comfort zone and I'm nervous. And 99% of the time, what I've seen is that everyone kind of automatically also relaxes because by being
Yes.
vulnerable and open about how you're feeling, you're validating anyone else in the room who might feel the same way. And for the extroverts in the room, hopefully that taps into their empathy and their awareness that this doesn't come easy to you. So it ends up becoming more of a safe space for everyone. I also just prepare. I know I said this before, but I know that preparing in advance, I can't emphasize enough how much it's helped calm my anxiety and make me feel like even if I have nothing else, I have some notes to rely on if I need to jumpstart my thought process. And then one thing that might seem a little counterintuitive, but I like to be the first to speak up in meetings. I kind of like liken it to exercise. Like if I don't exercise early in the day, it's not getting done. But once I do it, I find that it's not so bad and it's easier to stick to that routine. So similarly, I found that when I'm in a group situation and everyone starts talking first, I lose steam and I have too much time to start second guessing what I'm going to say. And so I think speaking first just helps break that barrier of participation. And as a bonus, you get the question out of the way early. You can either exhale for the rest of the meeting or it becomes easier to just keep participating.
Yeah, Mary's also chiming in with you saying yes, they also agree doing first in and done. You're getting let's see, emoji reactions saying yes from Brenda, from Kim. Let's see where else we got here. Mary, Amanda, Letsky, Francois, Kim, and Priscilla all agree. So yeah, I love that. I think you're right. It definitely helps to kind of break that ice. In the past, when I've been in situations where like y'all, I'm absolutely an extrovert. Let's be honest. But in situations where I've been like a bit unsure or like I don't really know that I belong in this room, I have volunteered to take the notes, or I'll just say like if I get called on for something, I'll be like, hey, I'm actually taking notes so I can review this later. Like I'm paying attention. I'm here. I want to be able to refer back to stuff later, and that has bought me the time that I needed to be able to like actually think about what we've been doing and walking through. But yeah, I like that idea of like kind of going first, even if you're not sure. And I very much appreciate the idea of saying like, hey, I'm a little bit nervous. I do this. Okay. I do this professionally, y'all. And when I host events in person, I am nervous. So I usually just call it out, and calling it out, if it doesn't make me stop, like kind of shimmer, like, like the tremors, it absolutely kind of helps get everybody on your side a little bit. It feels a little less like, oh, I have to impress them or they're going to hate me kind of thing. So
Yeah. I love the note-taking idea though. I'm going to borrow that more.
it's good. Well, because nobody's mad. Nobody's ever mad that there's notes about the meeting. Like,
It's so true.
yeah. All right. Now, when it comes to that, like we talked about, that kind of social energy and social battery, that's something that I know that I call on a lot to build relationships professionally and personally. So if you are a person that is trying to build professional relationships, how can introverts do this without exhausting all of their social energy?
Yeah. I think just to point to like one of many misconceptions, I think as introverts, many of us have an aversion to empty or surface level conversations because that's what really depletes our social energy. It's not like we don't like people. It's just that when we don't like when we're with people with whom we can't have authentic conversations. So I
It's
think,
weird.
yeah, it is weird.
You're just like, what do we talk about? There's only like 8 subjects. We've exhausted the weather and this is awful.
Yeah, and especially at work, when you're only supposed to really have kind of those surface or very work heavy conversations. And I think anyone who knows me on a personal or even professional level who's had a chance to get to talk to me one-on-one has been surprised that I actually love getting to know people and I have a lot to say. So I would focus on building those one-on-one relationships first so people have a chance to get to know you beyond just how you present in a public space where you may not feel like your authentic self. I find that I'm most comfortable in groups of 3. So the onus isn't all on me to make conversation with the other person, but the 3 of us can bounce off each other. So I began scheduling more of those kinds of meetings at work, and they became meetings I really looked forward to because they were a way to debrief, commiserate, laugh together. They just felt like safe spaces and not chores where we were just like throwing corporate jargon at each other. And that actually ended up being a really good way to build mutual respect and rapport. And it turned into us being champions for each other in wider team settings as well. So it translated very well. Um, I'm going to share an unpopular opinion because I know screen time and online meetings can be really tiring, but I found that working remotely and having virtual one-on-ones has been a really helpful way to build strong connections with people I would have never expected to talk to otherwise. So if you're in a position where you're working remotely, I would take full advantage of that, because knowing that I'm in the safety of my own home and in an environment that I know really well, that brings me comfort. And so it eliminates that aspect of being physically out of my element. So then I can use that extra energy towards building these professional relationships. So then when I do see them at work physically, I'm not quite as daunted by the idea of having to talk to them.
Yeah, I like this a lot. Mary agrees with you, saying, I'm not into surface convos, but I had to learn to do it to survive in the workplace. But I do small group side channels where we can just be ourselves. Donna Marie says the same thing. My last remote job required me to do small talk. It was terrifying 50% of the time, and I'll not choose a job like that again. I love the idea of doing it one-on-one, because you're right, that is a lot less overwhelming. It's a lot less kind of sensory stuff going on. As somebody that used to work in Power to Fly is my only remote job I've ever had. And so I always worked in like open format, open plan offices, because isn't it just more, ugh. But like, you know, then you're trying to have a conversation with somebody. You're trying to either you're trying to like water cooler chit chat, or you're trying to talk about something like a project or something.
Yeah.
There's all this other stuff going around. Like, I think you're right. It's a different type of social battery, and it's a different type of planning for like how that's going to exhaust you or not. But I think you're right. It's about kind of pointing yourself in the directions and in the settings where you think you will do best, and then trying to capitalize on that to build momentum. I think that's really.
Yeah, because if those spaces aren't going to be made for you, you really do have to like kind of do a bit of that extra work to find them for yourself. But
Yep. And Sarah says the same. Sarah says the agenda for our one-on-ones at my last remote role was posted before the meeting, so I was able to read through it and prepare.
that's
I
super
love
helpful.
that. I've gone to the point of like reaching out to what am I trying to think of? Not direct reports, somebody I report to. I mean, like, hey, I saw you scheduled a chat for like 3 o'clock on Friday. Can you just tell me that that's not bad? I know I'm not getting fired, but I just need you to hear me. I need to hear you say I'm not getting fired to like make my brain calm down. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's usually it. And then from then on, the emails or like the calendar holds came with a not a big problem or about this
Oh,
subject,
I love
whatever.
that.
I'm telling you, even the ones that said big problem, I was like, oh, great, I can handle this. I can catastrophize for the next 20 minutes. I'll be ready for this. It'll be great. But like, then I know to not waste that energy on, you know, the chats where it's a simple, like, hey, can you squeeze in time in your calendar today thing. So yeah. Okay. Now, one of the big subjects when it comes to talking about introverts tends to be imposter syndrome. Now, I don't think this is unique to introverts. I think extroverts get this as well, because I will tell you I get it. But how do you think introverts can kind of combat that self-doubt and imposter syndrome when they're in a professional setting?
Yeah, I love this question. I joke that I'm the poster child for imposter syndrome. I've had it quite literally my entire life, you know, whether it's school, personal relationships, professional situations. And like you said, I think it hits all of us, but I think introverts feel it harder because we're naturally very introspective to our own detriment sometimes. And there's a slippery slope between like going from being self-aware to being self-critical. So, you know, just like to briefly explain what it feels like, it's a lot about like thinking people around you overestimate your abilities and your accomplishments are all flukes, you're there by accident. And then it's the fear of finding out that, or everyone else finding out that you're a fraud. So like, then what are you going to do? So I think when it comes to fighting off those beliefs, what I've seen more and more in the workplace is that people actually do talk about that more. And if they don't at your workplace, or if it's too intimidating to start that conversation yourself, again, I would go back to those one-on-one conversations. And I think once I started getting more vocal about it at work, my workplace, even with those one-on-one conversations, I learned that like pretty much everyone feels the same way. And that led to two discoveries. First, I was talking to some people I considered to be brilliant, and I was shocked that they felt that way. And they were shocked that I felt that way. So once we all learned that we were in the same boat, not only did we all feel more comfortable talking about it, but we then made it a point to remind each other regularly of each other's capabilities. It was a really great way to feel less alone and support each other. I don't know if I should say, I'm going to say this. I think what conversations and experiences have also taught me is that like for a large portion of the time, nobody really knows what they're doing. No, like no one is
We're
perfect,
all
that's for
faking
sure.
it. y'all, truly every single day, because no one has ever done August 13th, 2024 ever before. And anybody that
It's
tells
a
you
great way
like,
of
oh,
looking
I'm good, I got that, you are flying by the seat of your pants and totally lying. Totally okay. We're all doing it. All right. I
totally.
lie to
Yep.
myself every day that I can do this job. But yeah, like there are so many more of us in that boat than a lot of us feel like.
Yeah. And so once you realize that everyone is kind of winging it and learning as they go, it became easier for me to be like, it becomes easier to see that there's no point in thinking, oh, I don't deserve to be here like that person. Because like, why? That person doesn't know what they're doing either. We're all in it together.
Yeah. I like that. Brenda is also saying that that'd be a great water cooler topic. So what's your imposter persona telling you today? And Brenda, you think that's funny, but I'm telling you, that's how I call it out. Like if I'm not having, if I'm having a rough day, I'll tell like my bestie, like, yeah, my brain's just being really mean to me today, or I'm just not feeling that great or confident in these abilities. And I'm telling you, like being able to call it out, it's like it takes the power out of it. It makes it feel, it doesn't make it feel silly. Like it doesn't make me feel silly, but I'm like, well, that's a silly thing to worry about. Why are we worrying about that? All right, let's just not worry about it anymore. So it doesn't always work great, but absolutely a good option there. Francois also says one of the main contributors to imposter syndrome is the people who love making colleagues voluntold experts. And I think this is really true, right? Everybody has that colleague that like my buddy's in insurance. He also is heavily tattooed. Because he has visible tattoos, they assume he's young and that he can do all of the IT stuff. So I'm right there with you, Francois. There's a lot of this going around. But yeah, I mean, like, especially like you said, Anisha, even telling your coworkers, like, oh, you are the GOAT when it comes to XYZ. Ria and I used to work together at our last place of business, and Ria is absolutely the Excel GOAT. That girl knows how to do everything in Excel. She's got all the hotkeys. She knows what she's doing. And every time I saw someone come to her desk and ask for help or whatever, and we would all tell her, like, oh, you're amazing at this. And she's like, no, it's not that. Yes, this is why people come. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to bring you your flowers. You can decide to water them or not, but they're still bringing them and lay them on your desk.
That's so true. And I think, like if you're in a workplace where a culture of feedback is common, I used to rely a lot on, not that you like always need validation from other people, but I do think it is helpful in moments where you're feeling a little self-conscious or not confident to I've looked back on the feedback, the written feedback that people have given me, and it's nice to look at yourself from the lens of someone else who doesn't have the self-deprecating view that you do.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit of kind of reframing here. There are a lot of times that people perceive quiet to mean not really that there's not much going on, or that there's not, the person is not really necessarily brimming with ideas. And obviously, this is not the case. So what do you think introverts can do to reframe that quiet nature as a strength as opposed to a lack or a weakness?
Yeah, I think it can be so easy when we're surrounded by these like wonderful, outspoken extroverts at work or generally out in a world that favors more of those like bold, talkative personalities. It's easy to start thinking that there's something wrong or weak about us if we aren't as visible or audible. Um, I think the first thing I'd say is that reframing really starts internally. Like you only begin to see and leverage your strengths as an introvert when you start owning and embracing those introverted traits. Um, and there's one resource in particular that's really helped me is there's a wonderful book. I think it's quite well known by a writer and lecturer named Susan Cain. And she's written a book called Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And for anyone who's looking to find more strength in their introversion and reframe how they look at themselves, I'd highly recommend that they read that. I think she has an old TED Talk as well, which I would recommend. And there's a lot of good stuff in there, but she talks about how some of the things we may perceive as weakness because of the way the world has socialized us are actually gifts. So the preference for solitary time over large gatherings, like how dare we, right? In corporate environments where it's all about brainstorming together and groupthink, but what they don't realize is that solitude is actually a really key component of efficiency and creativity. Maybe we've been told that we're antisocial or too shy. First of all, I don't think that there's anything really wrong with being shy, but I would reframe that by saying we're not antisocial, we're reflective, we're analytical, we're empathetic, we're great listeners. We like to really think about what we're going to say before we say it. We like considering things from different angles and not just one. And I think these are such beneficial qualities to have in a workplace. I think it points to an ability to be diplomatic, but also have a backbone if you're discerning about what you say and when you say it. I've seen that people sit up and pay closer attention because they know that you're not just talking to hear your own voice. And I think most importantly, when you start embracing your introversion, you just show up with so much more confidence and you reflect that energy and people pick up on that. And it's funny, I had an interview just a few weeks ago where that classic question came up of like, what are your biggest strengths or whatever? And I realized how far I've come when I just straight up said, oh, I think my biggest strength is that I am an introvert. So
Like,
yeah,
yes.
it starts with.
Yes, I love this. All right, and you've got a ton of people also chiming in as well, with a lot of agreement. And we also threw Susan Cain's website with the link to her book in our in the channel or in the group chat there. So if you're interested in that, pull that out. Mary's chiming in saying, Anisha, you are preaching. When your school teacher starts with the something wrong with you talk, push back. I used to teach children how to do this and tell them there was nothing wrong with them. Your difference is your gift.
Oh,
I think that's wonderful because truly, like, let's be real. As somebody who cannot ever be quiet, I am just constantly talking. I am also constantly saying nothing, literally. Like, not something that's not really valuable or it might be funny, but it's a throwaway comment and whatever. And did I need to waste the oxygen? No, not really. But I have friends who are quiet, and that immediately for me, because I can't ever shut up, I assume that when they talk, it is way more important because they have been quiet and they're not just like frittering their words away and wasting everybody else's supply for the day. But like, I truly like lean into that, lean into the mysterious man on the mountainside sort of thing, because like everybody's going to write some level of lore about you in their heads anyway. You might as well use it to your advantage. People are going to think
yeah,
I'm like scary and be like a total badass because I have colored hair and tattoos. Let them. I'm a giant marshmallow. Okay. Like total tiny, scared small child. Like truly lean into the lore, especially when it works to your advantage.
definitely.
All right. There are plenty of people here today, and I'm sure around the world, who feel like they are in a setting that is absolutely designed for extroverts. Either it is an industry that they're a part of that really only rewards, the people that are kind of jumping up and being in show off time or in the way, or whether it's just their department. How do you recommend introverts kind of try to grow in a company or in a setting that might seem dominated by extroverts?
Yeah, I've heard this piece of advice way too often. I just want to say it to then dispel it, which is that people say fake it till you make it. And I don't want to completely knock that approach because it may work for some people, but at the same time, I don't want people to think that the way to thrive as an introvert in an extroverted workplace is to become an extrovert. That just defeats the point of this whole conversation. It's just hard to change who we inherently are. And I think, yeah, it's so one thing I refer you back to Susan Cain's book. I think there are also like online courses on self-improvement, communication, leadership, because I do think there's a difference between like knowing who you are and sticking to who you are as an introvert, but also still wanting and needing ways to grow. So there's online communities that, you share experiences, insights with like-minded introverts. And I found that making allies in the workplace who know me for more than just my introvertedness has really helped me feel like I have support. And it's not like they have to speak for me, but sometimes it's nice to have people stand up for me to others who may misunderstand my personality. So again, I make the most of those one-on-one interactions. And yeah, it just makes the workplace feel less foreign, less scary. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, honestly, what you're talking about and what you've essentially created is a brand for yourself, right? You've started off, you've talked to a couple people around the company that know who you are in a more whole, like kind of holistic way, as opposed to like just the facets of yourself that you show off in, certain professional settings. So I think that is really important to like we talked about, like know who you are and all of that. That's lovely. It's also going to take time. Okay. If you're 22, you're not supposed to know who you are, and it's going to change like 6 times before you turn 30. So it's okay. But like, think about these things and try and know who you are, what you bring to the table, and then work on kind of a grassroots campaign of that. Because once one person is aware, like, oh yeah, she's not quiet, like she's not super quiet. She just, it's not that she doesn't have ideas. She's just a little quiet in meetings. She doesn't like to, come out and say what's the first idea that came to her mind, which
Right.
is not a problem and not a bad
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give an example, like You're gonna win some and lose some. I had a manager a few years ago. It's gonna be forever imprinted in my mind. She described me as meek to other colleagues and disengaged to other colleagues on my team, just because I had introverted tendencies. And no matter how much I tried, and I spent a disproportionate amount of energy trying to prove to her otherwise, but the label just stuck.
Mhm.
So I've seen the effect that like misconceptions like that can have and be very disheartening. But what helped is that other people on my team were able to see me for more than just that, and they were able to like really show up and champion my accomplishments to her. So again, building those allies really does help.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, truly, that's what you've done. You've created a group of people who can talk about you when you're not in the room, and you know that what they're saying is accurate and is not just one like magnifying one facet of you out of proportion.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, absolutely lean in. Okay. All right. We talked about this before we went on today because you were telling me that you were a little bit nervous for today's event.
Mhm.
What tips do you have for introverts who struggle with networking or public speaking in professional settings?
Um, yeah. So I'm still nervous, by the way, if you haven't picked up on it. But
I have not. I would never, honestly, I would never have known. And there's plenty of people that I interview, and some people you can kind of tell, but like, no, I would, you have
oh, lovely.
totally fine this entire time.
Okay, great. I'm going to choose to believe that. Um, I think that in public settings, it again, it's like hitching. What I find it very helpful to hitch my wagon to extroverted personalities. They can be the people to help introduce you to others. I've done this in social settings, professional settings. I think having them there, like supposing you're talking to someone you don't really know, but having a third person there who's comfortable talking is hugely helpful because then I'm participating, but I don't feel like I have to do all the talking and there's less of a chance of like awkward silences because I really dread those. And then I also find it really helpful. This is not really a unique idea, but it's been really helpful in practical situations where if I'm on my own, I just give myself a window of time and a small goal. And I'm like, I'm going to go to this event for 1 hour and talk to two people. So you give yourself an assignment, but you also give yourself an out. So you're not getting too overstimulated and overwhelmed by everything.
Ooh, there we go. I lost my mute button. It happened. It only took 51 minutes to do it. Sarah's chiming in saying, find an extrovert to adopt you. Yes, 110%. This is why I tell people, like when we host in-person events, like if you don't know anybody, come talk to me and I will introduce you to someone. I will find someone for you to talk to that will not be miserable. And this is what we do, okay? Like if I'm not helping to introduce people, I'm having show off time. So this is me trying to prevent me being the center of every conversation by saying, have you heard of Anisha? Anisha's amazing. She loves to do X, Y, and Z, and she's really great at that. And so you should definitely talk to her, like 110%. Like ask the extroverts. They'll do it. They
You're
will.
a true ally. No, I love that.
Because let's be real, it gives us another chance to be like, to sort of show off and be like, guess what? I'm going to introduce you to this really cool person. Truly, like just ask. It's the same as like when you step up on stage and you're like, hey guys, I'm a little bit nervous tonight. So just stick with me on this and everything will be great. I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
think it just
wonderful.
speaks to that authenticity element too. I'm very allergic to pretension. So just getting up there and be like, this is how I'm feeling, deal with it,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Britt's chiming in with a really great question. I don't know that we'll have an answer, but we'll try. Britt says, does anyone have tips for how you can manage being an introvert and needing solitude and being observant, but also being hyper talkative due to ADHD and it being triggered by group environments or meetings? The dichotomy of it creates a lot of anxiety for me to manage in the workplace. Yes, I have this a lot. I want to know how other people handle it though. Anisha, have you ever, is this something that you deal with at all, or is the
And
talkative bit not really
no,
your
I
thing?
can't say I'm very well informed to speak on this, but I'd love to hear
Okay.
your thoughts.
So this is where I start with notes, especially in a meeting sense, because I have ADHD as well. And if I don't express the idea, the second it goes through my head, it'll be lost. And in that moment, it feels like the key to everything. Like, even though it's not, all I'm doing is saying toaster strudel or something, but like it feels like this has to be said right away. So it makes it hard for me to not interrupt people, which, as you can tell, for an interview dynamic is a little bit difficult. So instead, I have notes. So I'll like keep a pad and pen. Like I have like 3 of them across my desk right now. I'll use my phone in a pinch, but I'll basically like if people start talking and I think that there's things I want to contribute, I'll start a list because I know that if I'm the first person to raise my hand, I will not shut up. So I wait to let other people raise their hand because I'm an extrovert. But if you are an introvert, this might also help you because then you can kind of be jotting your notes down of these are the things that I want to say, and kind of balance that out. Britt, the other thing I do, because like I work remotely, my husband's at work all day. It's just me and the dogs here. So like he gets home and I'm immediately like, oh my gosh, everything's fun. And did you have this? And I had this for lunch. And what did you have? And blah, blah, blah. So for me to try and like meter that out a bit, I will try and schedule myself, or I'll try and like reach out to some of my girlfriends during the day. And so I'll not necessarily like dump, but I'll like call one of my friends and be like, kind of get the like burst of I haven't talked to another human all day yet sort of out. So that might also be something that would be helpful. But I want to see what other people are chiming in here as well. See, Crystal says, I just came back from a conference where a speaker told me I knew as much that I could teach the class. And I immediately said, nope, I'm good. I'll listen and chime in, but that's about it. Crystal, I love this. Okay, Nicole has a good question. What questions can we ask during a job interview setting to find out if the culture is understanding of introverts and what they have to offer? I like this.
I'm going through that right now, to be honest.
Kim says, ask if it's an open office or if you can work remote or hybrid. That's a really good one. Yeah.
I think that's a really important question. And then, if you're talking to somebody who may be your manager, I mean, I think it's worth it to just straight up ask like what their management style is and what their expectations are. Because if they're a manager who likes to, be really involved, or if there's somebody who's like, no, I like to kind of be hands off and let everybody do their thing, you just get a sense of how much you might be having to interact with them on a regular basis.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Okay, we've got 4 minutes left. We're trying to get to one more question. All right. How can introverts effectively advocate for themselves and their ideas without feeling uncomfortable? So you're in a meeting. Everybody's been kind of talking over each other. You've managed to get your idea out, and now you're trying to sort of fight for it, or kind of point out why this is the best choice. How have you done this in the past?
Usually what I like to do is just take time to listen to everyone else's perspectives first. It doesn't mean that I have to agree with everybody, but just as introverts like to think about things from different angles, I like to then invite other angles from other people. But for me, it's always been helpful to just do it in writing first. So whether I'm actually like giving them the written form of communication, or if I'm writing out my thoughts first and then scheduling follow-up time with them to further advocate for my ideas. That's how I personally work best.
I like that. And I think it's smart to be able to say like, and you can even use that as the form of the question, right? Like, hey, I work best in X, Y, and Z. I'm not really great like off the cuff. If you guys do popcorn meetings or something like that, could I talk to the team about, or talk to the manager about, what contribution meetings are like? And obviously it's going to greatly differ depending on what your field is or what kind of job you're looking for. But I think it's a good idea to ask the questions like, what kind of leadership style do you use, blah, blah, blah. And then if you're not getting the answers that you need, or if it's not being like, not being very clear, like you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you.
100%.
So like ask your questions, but like ask them like, hey, I work best in this format, blah, 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 blah. Is this going to be a problem? Or like I see this for this role, you're going to ask me to make a lot of phone calls, and I'm in an open format office and other people are going to make phone calls as well. That's going to make it really hard for me to hear and like stay in line of what's going on these calls. Could we like, is there a chance for like a headset situation or something? Because, that's kind of what I need to make sure that I can block out everything else and do a good job on the call. Like knowing what you need and being able to like pose potential accommodations for that is huge, because it shows that you're not just the person that's going to bring a problem and expect a solution to be presented, which, it's a good thing to show off in interviews for sure. All right. Let's see. Oh, that's another one. Rob says, how does an organization accommodate and leverage the strengths of both introverted and extroverted employees to create a balanced and productive work environment? This is a good one. I think pairing them makes sense. Kind of like they do with like cheetahs and golden retrievers in zoos, because cheetahs are nervous and goldens are just chill as all hell. So for my mind, it makes more sense to pair everybody, so that way you're kind of balanced out of like, I don't want to do this bit, let her do it. But yeah, what about you, Anisha? What would you like to see? What would you like to see in offices to kind of make introverts a little bit better heard?
I mean, I would, turn that question around to the extroverts in the room. Like, how would you challenge your misconception? How can you empower the quieter talent around you, especially if you're in a leadership position or a DEI role or in HR? I've shared a lot about how introverts can navigate the workplace, but I think there's also a responsibility here for extroverts to be supporters. And so whether that's offering team members more time to prepare before meetings, or again, somebody had brought up the idea of having the agenda in advance. I think that's fairly common, but the more that's done, the better. Or ask the people how they like to work best and give them tasks where they can leverage their strengths. Provide quiet spaces to work in the office, acknowledge their accomplishments, because introverts really do thrive on praise, even though they don't like to be loud about their own achievements. And check in, I think for introverts, one-on-ones, again, are meetings where we feel most comfortable to share. So yeah, I'd love to see extroverts be more a part of this. We're already doing a lot on our end to adjust to a world that prefers and rewards them. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Anisha, we are out of time for today, but I just want to say massive thank you. It has been wonderful to get to know you and get to learn from you a little bit more today. Is there anything you want our audience members to know before they leave?
um about this topic, I would love to just say
About
one.
anything at all. I mean, how can they keep up with you? What should they know about, your journey as an introvert as well? What should people take with them from today's event?
Yeah, so I think just one last thing I'd say is that I touched on this earlier, but you don't have to change your personality entirely to accommodate the world around you. I think introverts have so many necessary gifts to contribute to a workplace. And I think, again, there's a difference between pushing yourself to grow and evolve, which is necessary, but then forcing yourself to be someone you're not, which is not necessary. So don't let the label of being an introvert hold you back from projects or jobs you think are more suited for extroverts. I think as I've gotten more comfortable with myself as an introvert, I've been able to unlock so many opportunities that once intimidated me because I'm not treating my personality like a disadvantage anymore. So I'd encourage everyone who identifies with introverted traits to do the same thing. It can be your biggest asset, and the workplace does need you, even if it doesn't think so.
Yes, 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 yes. I love this so, so much. Thank you, Anisha.
Thank
I also
you.
want to take the last minute we have. I'm sorry, y'all. I know we're over on time, but I just want to say a huge thank you to our audience members as well. Truly, these events come alive when you all participate. I think a lot of us today can understand where that, how that happens. And I very, very much appreciate that you all took time out of your day, not just to be here with us, but to participate, to make the event even better. Obviously, I have a job because you come to events like this, which I love, but even more so, I love that you all just took 60 minutes out of your day to do something positive for yourself and your career. That is not easy in this day and age. So whether you are a little treat person or not, listen to Meg, give yourself, a pat on the back, gold star, cookie, Starbucks, whatever it is, that makes the hellscape of reality a little bit better for you right now, and go ahead and treat yourself. Again, thank you so, so much for spending time with Power to Fly and Anisha Jhaveri today. If this has been your first Power to Fly event, I sincerely hope it will not be your last. And if this has been your 50th or 500th, we cannot wait to see you again. Now go out and have the day that y'all deserve to have. Bye, everybody.